Hello, and welcome to the Global Hub for People, Culture, and Leadership. My name is Jonathan Rodriguez, and I'm thrilled to be welcoming you today to the International People and Culture Week 2025. We've made it. You've made it. We've all made it. It's been a hard work, got a lot of labor out there, and happy Labor Day to all of you who are joining us today. Of course, as we like to call it in our part of the world, Happy International People and Culture Week. And of course, it's a tremendous lineup of speakers we have over the next four panels joining us. And we're kickstarting today, and what a great day to be kickstarting because we've just touched 5,000 followers on LinkedIn, and we just had 600 members join us at the PCA. So really, really exciting times at the PCA. The International People and Culture Week is brought to you by the People and Culture Association, or the PCA, and of course sponsored by the TCM Group, Resolution Framework, Engage Coaching, Engage Leadership, and today specifically People and Culture Consulting. I'm really, really looking forward to this. So if you're not a member yet, by the way, you can join us right now. Right now. All you got to do is drop me an email at info@peopleprofessionals.org, and I can send you some more details right away. So you can become an international member at the PCA for free today itself. So you can either be a student member or a professional member, and you get access to an archive of journals, podcasts, blogs, and the most important thing, we meet once every month to just discuss what's happening, what's trending in the world of people and culture. So there's no reason to procrastinate now. Join us, find your tribe, because you're already making a huge difference, and it's time to join the club, right? So all you got to do is drop an email at info@peopleprofessionals.org, and I can send you some more details. But we've got an exciting lineup of speakers for you today. Brilliant people and culture professionals joining us from different parts of the globe over the next 4 days. And they'll be joining David Little on this panel. For those of you who do not know David yet, of course, you know him as the CEO of the TCM Group and the president of the PCA, the author of Managing Conflict and Transformational Culture, and soon the author of People and Culture, due to be released in the autumn of 2025, I believe. So really, really looking forward to that book coming out very, very soon. I'm just going to handle a little backstage noise there. But yeah, joining David on today's panel are three exceptional speakers. Good evening to Kate, joining us all the way from Nairobi in Kenya. Kate is the Director of People, Culture, and Change at Nightwise Human Capital. She's got decades of experience in HR, recruitment, leadership, organizational change, and we can't wait to dive into that as she's going to talk to us about how she's making culture everybody's business. Thank you so much for joining us, Kate. A very good afternoon to Dan Good, who's joining us from Bristol in the UK. Dan is the Chief People Officer at the University of West of England with nearly 2 decades of experience, including Chief Officer for People and Organizational Development at Avon and Somerset Police. So really looking forward to that experience coming as well today, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us once again on this panel.
Good to be with
and
you.
Also, a good afternoon to Kirsty Ashman, who is joining us once again from the UK. Kirsty is the Global People and Culture Director for a Copenhagen-based company, ISS. Once again, with 2 decades of experience on the table, including holding a position of People Officer 2 decades ago, much before people and culture got fashionable as a function. Really looking forward to diving into that as well with Kirsty as we progress. So before we get started, I don't want to keep blabbing here, but if you're joining us live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube, use the comment section, say hello, tell us where you're joining us from. You can pose a question, you can disagree with what the speakers are saying, you can share your opinion and your insight. You don't have to always agree with what they're saying. But if you can also repost the LinkedIn post that you're joining us from today, it will help us spread the word and take this message further as we build a global hub for people in culture and leadership. So without further ado, I want to pass the mic to our sponsor for today, People and Culture Consulting. And representing People and Culture Consulting today is Eunice Oiteje, who is the Customer Success Manager at People and Culture Consulting. Eunice, the mic is yours. Tell us what's cooking in your world of people and culture out there.
Thanks so much, JR. Hello, everyone. It's really great to have everyone on this and be given the opportunity to launch People and Culture Week. I work for TCM. So TCM is a company that looks at... Sorry, let me make sure I have my slides. Are my slides on the screen? There we go.
You're good.
So TCM is an organisation owned by David Liddell, and it was established in 2001, and we're on a mission to transform the culture of the modern workplace. A really substantial brand within that is People and Culture Consulting, which links really clearly into our theme of International People and Culture Week, which is culture is everybody's business. So we look at embracing innovative, people-first, industry-leading practices to empower organisations to harness the power of culture. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about culture today, just to set off International People and Culture Week. And as I said, the theme this year is who owns culture? But to really understand that, we want to first look at what makes up culture. So culture is made up of every interaction and behaviours that happen within the little pockets of an organisation. And so it's really impossible for it to be seen as a top-down approach or even the responsibility of solely a culture or a people team. It has to be on everyone's agenda, and it has to be a journey that each individual is on. It's a huge responsibility, and it's something that I think is really on the tip of what we look at with People and Culture Association. It's a collection of individuals who really care about driving that, and it's great to kind of have that community that everyone can join together. We've been having monthly PCA meetings, and it feels like a really safe space for people who are trying to drive change in this area. So I'm going to talk today about the 5 steps of becoming what we call at TCM a culture catalyst briefly. And this is taken from one of the courses we deliver, but this is just a really small snapshot in the couple of minutes that I've been given today. So step 1 is building a culture hub. A culture hub is a term that we've coined where a team or space looks at having positive behaviours, inclusive dialogues, and look at implementing a company's values. These hubs act as magnets, and they attract collaboration, reduce stress, and nurture psychological safety in the environment. Once they're implemented, they become a driving force of how culture should feel and inspire and spread throughout the organisation. Step 2 is looking at winning hearts and minds. So this means engaging people in the why behind culture change and encouraging people to listen and empathise and co-create solutions that work specifically for that organisation rather than just a high-level strategy that doesn't necessarily mean anything to the individuals that work there. And that is always going to result in people being more likely to embrace change and carry it forward. Step 3 is looking at aligning values with behaviour. So we know that values work and are well implemented when they are visible with behaviours, that people are reminded on their one-to-ones and reminded through how they perform throughout the organisation that this is the way that we see that the organisation is going to be run. And that takes open, honest and respectful conversations that give clarity on what's expected. So when we consistently reinforce values in meetings, feedback, in recognition and leadership behaviour, they stop just being words on the wall and they become part of the DNA of an organisation. Step 4 is resolving conflict early. So we know that conflict and complaints are inevitable, but what really defines culture is how they're managed and how they're handled. And so Culture Catalyst, the course, takes insight from our resolution framework, and this is a award-winning framework that David has created, and it's actually available as open source, so we don't charge for it. You can access it just by going on the www.resolutionframework website and downloading it and taking any advice for how you can implement that early conflict resolution. We've used it with organisations like Burberry, Next, Lloyds Banking, and they're really seeing kind of transformative differences in how they handle culture. And this works well as a culture catalyst because we know when people see challenges are being handled with care and integrity, they feel safe and they feel heard and they feel empowered to speak up. We're on step 5 now, which is celebrating success. So culture catalysts know that celebration is a key ingredient of transformation. When we recognise successes, big and small, it creates momentum and inspires others to embed positive behaviours. So we want to be highlighting wins and inviting others to join in on the journey and contribute to building this transformational culture. So that is a really quick whistle-stop tour of what is involved with Culture Catalyst. Now, this is run usually as a 1 or 2 day course and teaches you how to embed it into part of your wider, whether it's 1 year or 3 year strategy. So one thing we wanted to offer to everyone who is clearly wanting to drive this change in their organisation is one of our courses. So we're doing a exclusive course for people who are looking to drive this, and we have a discount code that takes it from $595 recommended retail price to $150. So this is being held on the 27th of May online. We already have individuals from really interesting organisations joining on there. But equally, we provide this course as something that can be delivered for your organization and tailored to your organization. So if you scan the QR code and put in the discount code Culture Catalyst, you can sign on to the course then. But if you wanted to discuss a more tailored version, my email is just below, eunice.bileji@the TCM Group. If you didn't quite catch that, you can just leave a comment to say that you're interested in, and I can reach out to you. You just leave your name and let me know that you're interested. I can reach out. So yeah, the course has had really good feedback. We most recently integrated it with NHS East of England, and we're just seeing really transformative results of having people throughout the organisation who, maybe it's their role, maybe it's not, are really able to channel that change. So yeah, that is me and my quick tour of Culture Catalyst. I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you throughout the rest of International People and Culture Week.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice. That was an excellent presentation and some really fun stuff happening, cooking out there in the PNC labs. Before I hand it over to David to take us through the next segment, which is going to be some exciting presentations on how our speakers are making culture everybody's business at their own workplaces. I just want to quickly do a little bit of an audio test with our speakers just to see if we are on the course. So, Kate, can I check if I can hear you and you can hear me there?
Hi, Jonathan.
That's good. That's good. Thanks, Kate. Dan?
Hi, Jonathan.
Perfect. Kirsty, do we have you still on the audio? Hi, Kirsty. All right. No worries. We'll fix that in the back end. David, over to you to take us through this next segment.
Amazing. I know we're going to get this fixed. Kirsty, can't wait to have the conversation with you. Wow. Yes, we're here. Jonathan, look, I can see we've got some great friends and regular visitors to the People and Culture Association on the call today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. But I hope you'll support me in my appreciation and gratitude to Jonathan, who is just incredible, a tour de force. You've done such an amazing amount of work, Jonathan, to get us to International People and Culture Week 2025. You've organised such an amazing array of events through the week. Got some fantastic and fabulous, inspiring speakers for us. I can't wait for the conversations to happen. But I just want to start off International People and Culture Week 2025 by giving a huge vote of appreciation and thanks, Jonathan, to you for your incredible efforts and work. It is very, very, very much appreciated. I know you've got a lot of other big things going on in your life, which we won't go into on a LinkedIn Live, but I know that there's lots of great stuff going on in your life at the moment. But thank you, Jonathan, on behalf of everyone involved in the People and Culture Association. Wow. So yeah, International People and Culture Week. This is our second year. Last year was just a tremendous success, and this year looks like it's going to bring so much more. And of course, the focus last year was on PR for HR. We were really wanting HR to tell its story, to celebrate its successes in our workplaces, and to demonstrate and inspire the powerful, impactful work that the people function has in our workplaces. And of course, planning for International People and Culture Week 2025, we have a global committee. Thank you to everyone who's on our global advisory board supporting us. And we were sat there a few months ago, scratching our heads. What can the theme be for 2025? And suddenly, Julie Turney, one of our great friends and is such a great advocate of the People and Culture Association, just made a comment. Well, culture's everyone's business, she said. It's like, that's the tagline. That's the tagline for International People and Culture Week 2025. I think she said it more by accident than a desire for it to become the tagline, because I think she was caught by surprise when we said, Julie, by the way, you've just come up with the tagline for International People and Culture Week. But it expressed everything that we believe about workplace culture. It is everybody's business. It's about how do we connect, grow, co-create, co-design, support, shift and sustain a positive culture in our workplaces. And I thought you set that out beautifully, Eunice, in your presentation. It's not just about leadership, although clearly they play a critical role. It's about how we all show up, how we agree, how we disagree, how we challenge, how we learn, how we grow, how we connect. And those are the moments that create culture. So today we're going to be focusing on how do we make culture everybody's business, and focusing on the incredible work that people professionals do all over the world to be able to bring powerful, sustainable, effective workplaces where we can flourish as human beings and be the most brilliant version of ourselves. And when people, culture, leadership combine. That underpins, it turbocharges our individual brilliance and our organizational effectiveness. And that's why I'm so excited about this conversation, as I am about the people and culture agenda more widely. But Kate, you'll know the format. We've been shown it. You're the first of our speakers for International People and Culture Week. So just to remind everyone of the format, each of our wonderful speakers has been given 6 minutes to present their perspective on why or how and how they make culture everybody's business. And I know, Kate, you've prepared some slides to help us on that journey of discovery and insight. And then we'll move, Dan, over to yourself. And I'll ask Kate, if it's okay, I can't help because being curious in culture is key. So I'm going to be curious, I'm sure. And I'm going to have some questions if that's okay. And what I'd also ask, if you're on LinkedIn Live, you're watching us on YouTube, please feel free to ask questions for our speakers as well, or for me, or for any of us. And as Jonathan said, it's okay to agree and disagree. So Kate will have that conversation. Dan, then I'll hand over to you. The same opportunity, 6 minutes, and a bit of Q&A and a conversation. Then, of course, Kirsty, assuming we can get all of the audio working just as we want it to, Kirsty, I'll come to you, and we'll have 6 minutes of an introduction, and then we'll have the Q&A. Then what I'd like to do is open up a wider conversation between us as a panel and thinking about what we've heard, what we've learned, what we've discovered, what's inspired us, what's challenged us, and have a really powerful conversation about how do we make culture everybody's business. But Kate, should we get started?
Sure. Just to confirm that my slides are on display.
They're not. They are coming now. Yes, we've got your slides, Kate. So look, I'm not going to start the clock, but I can have a quick look at the watch to give the impression I'm time managing it. Kate, we've got 6 minutes. Kate, over to you. How do we make culture everybody's business?
Great. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon. Culture is everybody's business. And I do like to look at culture as a tree. And for a tree to thrive, it needs to be rooted in the right soil, fed, nurtured. And for your organization to thrive, you also need to nurture. And in the tree analogy, I'm sure this is not new to the HR practitioners in the call. But this is a very useful analogy, and you can have the best strategy. And Peter Drucker's cliche term is so true that if you do not have the right culture, it's going to eat your strategy for breakfast. And now we've even added for lunch and dinner as well, or supper, depending on what you call it. But this tree analogy is really a good reflection that we use to help our clients also kind of unflesh what it is that they want out of their culture. So you may have that big vision that you want to achieve, but you must have the right culture. And that culture sits in the branches. And if you think about a tree, the branches need trimming so that they grow out right. They need to be manicured every so often. So that is what really culture is. And for that process to be happening, and when you manicure it right, another branches off and starts leafing in its own time, in its own pace, grows leaves that are very in the right color. When it's the right season, they fall off and then more branches grow. So that's really the culture that you want to achieve in your organization. And if you ever in doubt, just think about that tree in outside your backyard and look at it. Is it right? Is it looking healthy? And that's a good reflection on your culture. ADKAR is a change management methodology by ProSci. It's a ProSci methodology, being a ProSci certified practitioner, and there was a guide on how to manage change, culture and transformation. And really, this is where who is involved at which particular stage. So ADKAR speaks for whatever is displayed on your screen. A for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And in all these stages, there's different stakeholders that are involved. So in the awareness, you do want to know what is your culture, and that can be through your culture surveys or your focus group discussions, the feedback that you're getting. That's the awareness. Then you have to evaluate, is it right for us? Is it working for us? Has our culture morphed into something that we did not intend it to be? then you can correct it. And now here is where the exciting stuff starts, when you're trying to pivot the culture into something that you want it to be, to serve you. You were a brick and mortar organization, and you were pushed into virtual or remote working or hybrid working, and you can't keep a hold of your culture in all these diverse environments. Where is the desire? And here is the leadership role that comes into play. What's the desire of the leaders at the top? What's the culture that they want to drive? Then they have to document that and cascade it down. When they cascade it down to the managers and the workers, is there a broken telephone? Is that communication clear? Is that clarity? Is there shared understanding? Yeah. And the knowledge, have you created that buy-in into that this is our value system, and these are the behaviors that we feel mirror the culture that we want? And can it be lived day in, day out in your behaviors, in what you do, how you do, why you do it? Is that shared understanding? Is that knowledge throughout the organization to the various ways that you communicate knowledge or transfer knowledge or manage knowledge in your organization? Do your people have the ability, the capacity to change that culture to what you want it to be? So you do have to equip them with the ability, and in comes the people that you might want to earmark to drive this process, and those probably your culture champions. And we are now at the rank and file staff. Do they also believe in what you're trying to sell them? Yeah. Can they buy into that culture that you want to drive the organization to the next chapter? Reinforcement, this is another area where there's a lot of drama, because resistance to the culture change process is one of the biggest issues. In comes the conflict that Eunice was presenting on. I am comfortable. This is working for us. Why do we need to change it? So a lot of time and effort, a lot of stakeholder engagement at all levels of the organization need to be invested here in the reinforcement. And this actually tends to take the longest time, and it can actually take up to a year. We've involved probably everyone in the organization, so I hope it's pretty clear how everybody's involved at this point in time. But on the reinforcement, you probably have to have tools and techniques to make sure that that reinforcement is followed through. And this is just a sample of a journey, a roadmap of things that you can do to make sure that that reinforcement is happening in a culture transformation process. So you do want to have a baseline survey once your transformation is identified. Yeah, what's our culture code? What's our behaviors? And how do we all mutually agree that this is a shared understanding of what our culture is? The learning and development will help you with your ability, the knowledge, getting people to know and understand what it is. Then you do want to inculcate that process, that culture change process throughout the employee life cycle. Think of everything from recruitment to rewarding. There was an aspect of rewarding in Eunice's presentation as well. So call out those people who are actually living the values. They've been mentioned by your customers, they've been mentioned by peers, they've been mentioned by leaders as champions of those right culture that you want to achieve in your organization. So reward them, and that comes with the budget. So finance people, if you're in this call, you do have a role to play as well. You tend to be our biggest bottleneck sometimes when it comes for budgets, and you're saying we cannot afford that at this point in time. So to sum it all up, culture is everybody's business, and it starts at the top, yes, but everyone has a responsibility to play. Thank you very much. Happy to take questions.
Kate, that was just a wonderful walkthrough. And I really think the way you applied the ADKAR model there kind of brought it to life. And I think it also helped us to understand that to an extent, managing cultural transformation and cultural change, we can apply some of those principles that we've applied in other aspects of change within our organizations. It doesn't have to be overly complicated or overly challenging or difficult. I really like the way that you've brought some of those tools and models to life and have been able to apply them in a practical way. I love the tree analogy. I think it's so powerful. And I think that the building of the roots and the foundations for culture, to bear those fruits of workplace culture, just spoke to me. on so many different wonderful levels. And I think it was such a nice way of bringing it to life. But one of the challenges we face, Kate, is the world is full of people who subscribe to positive culture, but let's call some of the others skeptics, cynics, and naysayers. And we know who they are. I'm probably one sometimes. How do we embrace the skeptic, cynic, and naysayer? Because I'm guessing you might have met one or two in your journey. I know I have. And what tools and techniques do you have, Kate, when you're working with people who perhaps find it difficult to buy into that shared understanding of culture that you so vividly set out?
Yeah, there's a reverse psychology tactic that I have applied successfully. So your biggest resistor, you probably want to turn them into your biggest champion and to involve them. That has worked before. It might not always work, but the cynic, the person who's always so lax in the meeting and always criticizes whatever you're trying to do, that's the person you want to earmark and play reverse psychology on them and make them the champion. And there can be some success with that.
Love that. And I think it's really an interesting point. I sometimes worry, Ken, I guess I'll be really interested to hear other people's views. When I'm doing cultural change work, we have some people who are very, very supportive and really buying into it. But actually, when we scratch under the surface, they're maybe not bought in quite as much as we might have thought. But those people who are very honest and authentic and truthful, that they're finding it challenging, and they have some of their own perspectives and views that may be holding them back. When they overcome those, Kate, with your support, helping them on that journey, they become those champions, those advocates and ambassadors. And that just is such a powerful movement that you're building within the workplace. Kate, I was going to ask one more question, if I may. It is, what's the benefit of getting this stuff right? What benefit do you bring into organizations, or do you see when organizations get culture right in the way that you're describing it? What kind of impact do you see within our workplaces?
This is going to sound like a broken record, but your belonging, your employees will feel they belong. They will own whatever it is that your core business is. They will be your best promoters of whatever your organization is. So your employer net promoter score, your employer branding, your employer value proposition. Do I need to go on, David?
So why is it then, do I go into boardrooms, Kate, and I talk to leaders about the culture strategy and say either that's an HR thing, or in some organizations, as I've said before, I've seen better strategies for ordering paper clips. You've just described the most powerful asset on the register, on the asset register. Why is it not recognized in our boardrooms to have such a powerful impact? And why aren't we recognizing culture isn't just everyone's business? Kate, it's the greatest asset that we have, as well as our people.
We call it the greatest asset, but the challenge is it just boils down to numbers mostly in the boardroom. And unfortunately, you won't see that asset line around culture in the balance sheet. So it's really hard to sell the ROI. Sometimes it's not very tangible, or tangible in the immediate and the mid-term. So, and maybe it's too long-term for somebody to see the benefit for them.
Interesting.
So that's the biggest barrier.
I think that's a really interesting point. So in a desire for short-term gain and short-term advantage, the long game of getting culture right feels like it's just almost it's too far away. It may becomes too abstract. And I think that's a really fascinating point in our world of looking for short-term gain, that we maybe lose sight that actually investing now has a long-term advantage. And I think, Kay, and I'd love to hear what people might think about this. How can we codify the assets? How do we bring everyone with us? How do we overcome some of those challenges? And Danny, I can see you're commenting. Danny, Danny is great to have you here, by the way, a very good friend of the People and Culture Association, and an absolute advocate of all of the right things for culture. Danny, as you say, and as it inspires us every day, happy bees make tasty honey. And I think that's such a powerful way of describing culture, Danny. It's one of your most powerful sayings, and it inspires me. But Danny, you've talked about it not seen as an asset, it's seen as a cost. That is a fascinating point, and maybe it's one for us to talk about as a panel when we come to the conversation as well, is how do we shift it from a cost, or, Danny, risk? Because some people see conflict as a risk. Conflict audits, toxic conflict, toxic culture, we see it playing out in the news and in the media. So it becomes a risk to a cost to an asset. maybe there's a conversation to be had there. But Kate, that was, congratulations, the first panelist on International People and Culture Week 2025. And Kate, you've set the bar high, so thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
Been absolute joyful pleasure. Thank you. So Dan, we know each other well, and we're advocates of a modern people function, a modern justice system to help drive organizations forward by treating people well and finding spaces for them to disagree effectively. And we share a real passion for helping people to flourish, not just during the good times, but when things get tough. And that's really important as well. So Dan, you've got 6 minutes, my friend. I'm going to hand over to you and invite you to tell us a little bit more about how and why you make culture everybody's business.
David, thanks so much. And hello from a very hot and sticky London. It's boiling here. I'm normally based in Bristol, actually, but I'm here at the RSA in central London today, and it's fantastic to be with you. I mean, follow that. Really, really fantastic, Kate, and so much resonance for me as well. And you know, I'm going to take a slightly different take here in terms of, rather than talk through some of the processes and practices that work, I'm going to offer some provocations and a perspective. And as Jonathan said at the beginning, please jump in, offer your challenges, your critiques, and disagree with me if you want. Disagreeing well has to be part of a good culture, I think. So my day job is at the University of the West of England, as I say, in Bristol, large university, 40,000 staff. 40,000 students and 4,000 staff, and you know, all the challenges and opportunities that go with that. It's a fantastic place to be, and outside of that, involved in lots of other organizations. And my work is really at the intersection of people, culture, change, and leadership. So let me begin with something deceptively simple. Culture isn't what you say it's like to work here. It's actually what it feels like on a Tuesday afternoon. When someone's new, they're under pressure or working quietly and wondering if they still belong. And that really captures for me what culture is about. So let me talk about culture not being a cosmetic, but being a climatic issue. So we often treat culture, I think, in organizations as something that can be just simply cosmetic, a rebrand. Perhaps a video or a new set of values on the wall, but culture really isn't the paintwork, it's the air that we breathe. And it's really how power is experienced. And I want to say something more about power shortly. It's how conflict is held, and it's how inclusion is lived out or not, as the case may be. And I think that's really critical, because I'm going to say some things now about particularly UK context, but I suspect for many of you on the call, wherever you are in the world, some of these things might resonate. We have a number of forces, major forces, I think, pressing down on our workplaces. There's the cost of living strain that many people are experiencing in their life, and that affects them as they come into the workplace. There's widening inequalities. I think there's a collapse in institutional trust. And we see that through some of the surveys that measure that in the UK, including of government and institutions. There's polarization and identity tension that we have to navigate, that's complex and sometimes really, really difficult to get right. I think there's a level of structural burnout that is really beyond anything we've seen before, and it goes much further than simply stresses, normal stresses and strains in many ways. And I think we've got some generational shifts underway as well around what people have in terms of their expectations of meaning, autonomy, and purpose in the workplace. So what is culture really? Well, for me, it's the gap between what we preach and what we tolerate. And it's the unsaid, the ordinary, sometimes referred to as shadow values, not just the things that are laminated or stapled to a wall. And I think it's not the job. It's simply not just the job of the HR team or the people person. Culture is everybody's business, but especially those with power. I said I'd return to it. If you manage people, you shape the cultural weather in your organization. And that's, I think, really important in terms of where we focus. I want to say to you that it's in the simple acts. It's when someone shares something hard or someone listens without trying to immediately fix. It's when someone challenges the norm and is thanked for it and not punished. That's how culture changes, not through slogans and not through symbols, but through signals in the organization. practical signals in everyday work. Culture, if you'll excuse the joke, is for me like a sourdough starter. If anyone's had one of those, it's alive, it's temperamental, and it's prone to dying if you leave it unattended. So attend to your culture, especially if you're a leader with power. Your culture plan doesn't change how someone feels unless it's actually about what's it like in the meeting, how is the feedback handled. It's not just the strategy or the theatre, it's the reality of the lived experience in the organisation. And you don't need a survey to work out what's going on. Yes, they can be helpful. And, I would advise anybody to think about triangulating a variety of insights and sources to really understand. But your culture audit, go and walk around. Listen to the chat in the lift or in the kitchen. Very quickly, if you walk into different organizations, you will work out what people think, what they feel, and what's going on. And I speak with a degree of humility around this because I know we don't always get it right in our organizations. And I think it's important to do the complex, messy work of listening and understanding what's not right and then working together to make it better. We need leaders in that context who tell the truth about what's hard, who listen with a clear intent to change things compassionately and well, and who put relationship above reputation. I think that we really need to understand that the future world of work requires of those leaders certain capabilities more than ever, and that's relational intelligence. It's about rebuilding trust and navigating tensions. It's futures thinking. It's about being able to anticipate and adapt, often at pace. It's about public impact fluency. And by that, I mean that we don't just think about the organization from the inside out, we think from the outside in, not just customers, but communities that we serve an impact on as organizations. It's about ethical tech stewardship. So especially in the world of AI and the advancement of digital and automation and so on, we have to be really wise stewards and ethical stewards in that place. That affects culture and the organizations that we live and breathe that culture in. And it needs cultural adaptability. I don't need to tell anyone that on a call like this, where there's a plurality of different views, global perspectives, hybrid workplaces, different needs, and different elements of diversity in the workplace. We have to be culturally intelligent and culturally adaptable. So I say, just to conclude, design for reality, not for rhetoric. Culture belongs to everybody. And if it doesn't change somebody's Tuesday afternoon, really, what's the difference? What's the value that we're creating in the organization? It has to feel real on the ground, and that takes time, and it takes hard work, and it takes everybody pulling together. So there's my provocation to you, and I invite your challenge. I invite you to come and help me learn how to do this better, because we're all in this, aren't we? We're all in this game together. So thank you very much, and it's a real joy to be with you.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Dan. That was just really, really, really powerful. Set down some incredible challenges for us there, and also some challenges of people coming back. And I can see some of the comments, Dan. I don't know if you can see the comments there. Values that live, not laminated, said Danny. But Jeanette, you've mentioned that active listening is key. And I'm going to come back in a moment and ask you a question. And actually, before I ask you the question, Dan, because Jeanette, giving people a jolly good listening to is such an important part of having a good organizational culture. So I'm going to ask everyone who's on the live stream, what behaviors, capabilities, approaches are you delivering, or your managers delivering, or your people team, or actually you as an individual as well? What are you delivering to help drive the culture that Dan was talking about so profoundly there? And Dan, I'll ask you as well to focus, if we can. I'm going to focus in on the manager, the role of the manager, because you talked about the climate. And before I do that, I've often thought about the culture being an interface between 4 3-letter abbreviations. And actually, culture operates in these. I think you touched on some of these. The first one's the Daniel Pink stuff, mastery, autonomy, and purpose. The interface between mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and how that connects with some MAP, and how that connects with PAC, power, authority, and control. Mm-hmm. And how that connects with AIR, actions, interactions, and reactions. You talked about the climate, the behaviors, the AIR, actions, interactions, and reactions, and how that works in my 4th 3-letter abbreviation of BAU, business as usual. That's what's going on a Tuesday. And in the middle of that are our managers, helping to pull together those 4 3-letter abbreviations: mastery, autonomy, purpose, power, authority, control, actions, interactions, and reactions, and BAU. So it's a long-winded question, Dan, but I was kind of wanted to give you plenty of time to think about it. I was going to ask you, what capabilities do we need in our line to help be able to manage that internal tension between those different aspects and help to create that positive culture that you've so vividly created? What do we need from our management population?
So just as you were talking about those acronyms, my brain was whirring, thinking, my goodness, who'd want to be a manager? This is sometimes a really tough job.
That's an interesting start, yes.
Yeah, really tough job. So my question is, how do we, organisation, institutionally, equip leaders and managers, particularly when we know that they disproportionately affect the success or otherwise of that environment in which people can thrive or flourish, which were, I think, words that were described earlier. And I don't think there's enough intentionality about how we prepare new people who may never have managed a team before. How we set clear expectations, explicit and deliberate views about what good leadership and management looks like. And then how we offer developmental experiences, and I don't just mean by that training, but developmental experiences that build both competence and confidence in creating those environments in which people can thrive and flourish. And as you said before, the workforce is the most critical asset in any organization. It's also where the risk and opportunity lies. And why would we not spend our investment of time and money in making sure that we prioritize the development of those people who hold the key to performance and impact on our mission, on the things that we care about. So for me, it's really critical that we need people in those roles that have courage, that have compassion, that can make sense of a blizzard of data and information quickly to make evidence-based decisions, who can support people really, really well, set a clear vision, establish a plan, work their way through problems in a really collaborative fashion. Those are the key things for the future. As I say, relational, futures thinking, impact from the outside in, thinking about the tech that we work with and having that cultural adaptability. Those are the key things from my point of view.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Dan. And I kind of, well, you might not know, how would you guess where my questions go? But you talked about problem solving, and we've got a passion for this, I think. And I think many have. And people in HR might say, well, that's all well and good on problem solving, but we have a discipline and grievance procedure that takes care of the problem solving side of things. And of course, at the PCA, we are staunch, clear advocates of the removal of those processes from our workplaces because we see the trauma and the harm that comes about. We're not talking about a state of anarchy here, Dan. We're talking about a rules-based system which is transformative in nature, fair and just, inclusive, sustainable, kind, compassionate, but as the antecedents to high performance. I just wondered, Dan, if you're able to say a few words that you've been doing over the recent years to help reshift and reset the way that you do complaints management and handling some of those internal concerns when they occur in any workplace.
Yeah, so I mean, we've worked on different aspects of that in the often large and complex organisations, largely with a public purpose focus. Done that in policing and elsewhere. But in this resolution space in the university, we've been working on a resolution hub, trying to establish quickly where we can deploy skills like mediation and facilitation to support conflict resolution early. Also equipping some of our leaders and managers with those skills for early intervention and having good quality conversations, disagreeing well, also mediation skills for leaders and managers, not just for a specialist team in a HR function. So those things are important. I agree with what you said about the policy and procedure framework. I think we've got loads of work to do on that in our university. I know we're going to be partnering up with yourself in terms of working our way through some of those things. And I really am wanting to be more radical about how we approach that, because I think the old systems, which, as you say, are reactive, can cause harm, often don't have modern principles underpinning them about justice and compassion, do need to be reformed. And that requires everyone, especially the leadership of the organization, but also folks like trade unions and others to come on the journey as well, so that we can have a much more restorative approach, a reparative approach to how we move through difficulties in an organization.
And what I love about that, it's not going soft on problems, and it's not turning a blind eye to issues in our workplace, but what it is doing, and I think it's really powerful, Dan, what you're doing, and many organizations as well, because it's such a big shift in the way we think about justice, is recognizing that when problems occur, mistakes are made, I speak truth to power, I fall out, someone challenges me, how we handle those moments about creating spaces for learning and insight and growth, a shared understanding, a shared sense of humanity that connects us. Actually, that's very human, very powerful. It creates the currency of the future of work. And you talked earlier about the ethical use of AI in digital transformation. As we see automation and digital transformation, surely is it not incumbent on us as people, professionals and leaders to create the spaces for people to thrive? And the best places to do that is when we disagree. Yet in so many organizations, it's when we disagree or make a mistake that we crush people, blame, shame, punish. And an unfortunate byproduct of that is destroy, but we almost have to turn a blind eye to that because we're doing all the rest of it. But it seems to me that you're advocating a new way of approaching issues, which is so powerful there, which obviously we share. So Dan, thank you. I guess just to turn that into a question, you talked about justice and trust. And I just wondered, again, I'd be interested, Kate, to hear from you and Eunice as well, how justice and trust and connection underpin culture. What role do they play in culture? Because these aren't words that are used a lot when we talk about culture. Dan, over to you.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in, but Kate and Eunice as well. Great to hear from you on this. I think that sometimes fear and need underpin. So the psychology of what might be going on is either a fear or a need, right? The bit that is unmet, and so sometimes those fears can drive us to the defensive routine, can drive us to the blame or the shame. And actually, I think we have to notice. We notice by listening. We notice by using all of our human senses as to what's going on for people, not just on the outside, how things might be manifesting, but on the inside. And then we have ways to open up conversations about what might be happening there in order that we can move to a space that's more constructive and positive and address needs and fears in ways that are more just and are fairer. Those are very easy things to say. They're extremely sometimes hard things to do and build a confidence and a competence in. And I'm absolutely not naive about that challenge at scale as a leader in a large institution. I think we have a long way to go with it. And, we do need the right framework, but we also need the right capabilities being practiced and developed day to day.
I love that. And I think, Kate, to bring you in, I think we're talking about an HR function which was designed as process-led and a people function which is designed as people-led. Okay, what are your thoughts there, if you could jump in terms of sharing some insights in relation to the shift from process to people and that transformation within our HR functions to help unlock that sense of just and fair and high trust environments? Yeah,
so we definitely can no longer just be the policy people, the enforcers of policy, the enforcers of law, what the law says. That time has passed. And I think Dan mentioned the generational shift that's also happening in the workplace. And that's also got to be the trigger that actually just has got to make you see that even when you're having that difficult disciplinary conversation, you actually have to be actively listening to the person and not just telling them, you did this, here's your hearing, this is the date you're supposed to come for your hearing, and the committee has decided, and you give them the outcome of whatever that disciplinary process is. So that shift it's going to be a push factor just by the virtue of the generation that's actually now dominating the workplace. My fallback in this is around preparing that psychological safety. It's good to make the workers know that they can actually challenge authority, because we are probably from a generation where the employer weighs so much power on you that you're told what to do, report to work at this time, do this, that, the other. But that time you cannot do that anymore. So creating that psychological safety and quite honestly, it's actually a good thing, because it's that psychological safety that's going to also bring in those innovative ideas that people are probably too scared to talk about, because they're scared to share their ideas because they won't be rewarded or they won't be recognized for them. So psychological safety for me, the learning safety, the communicating openly is what builds trust.
I love that. So it's about that psychological safety, giving people the voice, and that then builds the trust, and moving away from process police to creating and enabling those spaces where people can speak up and trust. And it doesn't have to be scary. I think we've almost started to become fearful of it. And Jeanette, you made some really lovely points. And Jeanette, thank you so much for your wonderful points. But it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be conflictual. What I love about what you're saying, Kate and Jeanette, also, is it creates those connections. Eunice, just bringing you in, because obviously you're working with people and culture teams and leadership teams through our alignment labs, through the work we're doing around culture catalysts and elsewhere. Do you have any thoughts, Eunice, in terms of what you're hearing or what you're seeing in terms of how people functions, making that transition to this people-centered, purpose-driven and values-based methodology that we're describing here?
Yeah, I think that one thing that we're seeing is people needing to be upskilled. I think it's easy to assume that if you've done the transition from HR to people and culture, the skills are there. But it is a different way of working. Like you spoke about the generational shift and even the hybrid working and how that affects the way we work. It's a new set of skills. We need to make sure that we're giving people the skills to build the culture that we want, rather than just assuming they can carry on doing what they've always done. If you want different results, you have to do different things. I know you also spoke about the relationship between resolution and building culture. I think the link there is definitely through psychological safety. And that's something that comes up in almost all of the conversations around building culture, letting people feel safe enough to make mistakes and so that they can own up and then actually learn from them. And I think when you have these kind of grievance policies that look at retributive justice, people can't always feel safe enough to do that, and therefore the culture is one where people aren't safe, there's blame, you're not allowed to try something new. So I think just building that psychological safety is a really key link between the two.
Amazing. I think it's such an important call to arms, a kind of call to action for us in the people function to think about creating that space. And sometimes it comes too late. And what I think as we start to introduce those principles of psychological safety, the dialogue building, the connections, the deeper understanding, that kind of sense of connection, actually people build trust in the system, not necessarily in the people function but in the system, and they're much more likely to come forward at an earlier stage with their challenges, have those open conversations, challenge more, and that then leads to this sort of turbocharging of our cultures, which have become more compassionate, more connected, more interconnected, more co-design, more collaboration within the culture. But Nicholas Cassidy has asked the $64,000 question here, because I think we've probably seen this in much of our work at TCM. I'm sure many of you will have. Nicholas, thank you for this question. Please do feel free to ask us any questions. This is the big one. This is, how do we reverse what's often seen as a toxic culture? And this is the bit that I think really makes this question stand out, especially when that toxicity or the perception of the toxicity is coming from the leadership population. So we see the leaders as the driver of the culture. The saying is the fish rots at their head, but we want the leaders to be with us, but we can also see the toxic behaviors. Now it's good for me because I can ask the questions, because I'm not sure how I'm going to answer this one. So I'm going to invite you to share thoughts on this. And I wondered if anyone would like to kick off with any thoughts for Nicholas's question. How can we help steer our leaders towards a more transformational culture? Kate, I see you come up with that.
Yes, I do have a reaction to that, because it's very pertinent, and that psychological safety is what will give the leaders feedback to tell them that your culture is toxic, or what you do, how you speak to me, how you send emails in capital letters and exclamation marks. That's toxic. So that feedback, that environment ought to be there, and that feedback should get to them. We shouldn't be afraid of giving the leadership that feedback. Then we know what the issue is. How do we address it? And for leaders, you do have to stroke their egos, and so take them to those coaching sessions offsite over a period of time in somewhere. You have to work with what they have. So I think coaching, and also as a long-term solution, so gets the coaching professionals to work with them in that journey to it's a mindset shift that needs to happen in terms of them knowing how they need to lead from the top, because the managers and the employees will be mirroring their behavior. So if you're sending an email in capital letters, an employee will know that's okay to do. That's my reaction, David.
I think
if I can just come in there, David, sorry, I think that's a very pertinent point that Kate's brought up about, making sure that the leadership hears and listens to you and, kind of understands that there is a difference of opinion, there is that struggle. And I think there's no harm in doing that. And in the negotiation world, we keep talking about this concept of separating the person from the problem.
Yeah.
Right? And we talk about it in terms of principle negotiation. We talk about it in terms of conflict resolution. And I think if we try and separate the person from the problem, then there is a better chance of us communicating back to leadership, saying that something's not working out. But if we go on the personal, if we start attacking the person, that's when we lose focus. We lose track of what we want to fix. We're expecting that person to be easy to work with. We're expecting everyone who's in our workplace to be easy to work with. That's not going to be the point. That's the whole thing about disagreeing well. And Kate spoke about active listening earlier, about being there, being present. But I think if we keep away, and there are so many exercises in the training world to make this happen. But if we strive to keep the person away from the problem, then there's a better chance of us being able to communicate. There is a problem. There is a problem. The fact that we have not been heard, or we're not being listened to, and if that gets communicated to someone who's being toxic, there is still hope that person's going to open up and open their mind to the fact that, okay, there's something that I need to kind of take a step back and listen to and see what's happening. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring that in there. But Dan,
I mean, I'd just say, as one of those people who maybe sits in the C-suite, I sometimes find the language and the labels unhelpful, and we kind of, run the risk of dehumanizing. And the reality is, even the people in those top jobs are human beings with a whole bunch of challenges and issues to contend with day in and day out. And I actually think there's something about where do they get their listening, where do they get their resilience, where do they develop their skills, and we have to work to find ways, whether that be coaching or other things, to support each other through the challenges that exist. But I don't think there's ever been a time when those C-suite leaders, the same as many others in the organization, but have faced so many competing priorities and challenges, and trying to navigate that is no easy task. I think we have to work increasingly hard as well with those rising expectations I talked about closing the power distance. And that takes energy, effort. It also takes a lot of courage to stand in front of people and explain, be answerable for the things that you do. And I think that level of transparency is what is required in relation to the trust. But my goodness, those things are not easy. So we have to stand in that place together, not kind of ostracize one another through labels or anything else, but recognize we all share a mission and a purpose, and we're trying to generate meaningful, constructive workplace decisions together. Co-design was a great word, I think, but we have to go into that with a level of discomfort and know that that's the right thing to do.
And it's just a wonderful and nice. Nicholas, I hope you've got some great insights there. I think that was just an incredible conversation. I think it's a really interesting. I prefer the term culture shock than toxic culture. So I think there's less of a inferred blame with it. And I think when I'm talking, I always, as a sort of restorative practitioner and mediator, I'm always kind of interested in reframing language. We often think, you talked about mindset, Kate, kind of mindset drives language, drives behavior drives feelings drives culture. And there's that kind of interface and interrelationship between mindset, language, behaviors, and culture. And of course, it happens here, head, heart, and gut. So I'm always thinking, okay, how do we reframe the word toxic? And I kind of sat in my here listening to that phrase and thinking, actually, the word, to me, the opposite of that is empathy. And I think when we start working with leaders and start thinking about empathy, it's a really interesting point, because we talked earlier about the idea of culture in the asset register and on the balance sheet. And people often think, well, empathy and compassion, it's all a bit soft and fluffy. But let's get back to the emails, Kate. If we just took a moment and reflected on how that might land for the other person, then actually we may not send that email. We may, classic jargon, we might put it into drafts, or we may not send it. Or actually what we might do is repurpose that email and rewrite that email. Now, I would argue, and I think this is, I'd love to hear what people's thoughts are on this. And I know some of you are deeply embedded in research and analysis around people, culture, and HR. So if you've got any data, folks, please do share this, because this is my somewhat anecdotal assertion. My anecdotal assertion is that when a manager or leader applies empathy during the decision-making process, it's a better decision in terms of business outcome and business benefit, and also benefit for the individual. And that's my assertion and my perspective. If anyone has any evidence or data to share in terms of the power of empathy in management and leadership decision making, I'd love to hear it for it, because I think that, Nicholas, presents the counter perspective on the concept of toxicity. Is how do we build in and bake in empathy and compassion? The problem we've got, and Kate, Dan, Eunice, please do jump in here, it's got a really bad reputation as soft and fluffy, and it's something that HR might do, a cup of tea and a chat. It's not happening in the tough boardrooms. But I've made my assertion. I believe we make better business decisions when we put ourselves in the person's shoes who's on the receiving end of the decision. Agree or disagree, evidence to support it, please do share. That's the benefit of International People and Culture Week. But Kate, did you have any thoughts? Dan and Eunice, please do share thoughts around reframing the language to be more constructive.
Yeah, I don't have a data point to cite, but maybe just an experience about this whole, I think toxic culture is a label that has gone what we would call viral in the very recent press, and it's catchy, and whenever you hear it, you're just taken aback. But let's try and unpack what really toxic work culture are. More often than not, it boils down to communication, how we communicate, how people experience what we're trying to communicate, because empathetic leadership doesn't necessarily mean that I cannot get a no, but it's the how will I get that no. Yes. If I'm asking for £10,000 budget for a marketing and you cannot give me, how are you going to communicate to me in a way that I do not feel disgruntled, I do not feel like you're a bottleneck to what I'm trying to achieve? It's the how. That's what I feel. Toxic environments, that, yes, I do agree, it's cliche. I do also try to unpack always whenever I hear about toxic environments, but the communication, the way we interact, the how will somebody feel in their head when you interact with them, like you said, in the heart and in their gut. When they see you coming on the corridor, do they get that not in their tummy? Yes, so we need to unpack it, and maybe this is the next year's Culture Week might be looking at toxic work culture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, and Danny, I'm loving your comments, Danny. I love the fact you said try not to pull out the soapbox, but Danny, I can see that was definitely pulled out there, and we've got your link. I can't wait to read that, and I hope everyone will have a good read of that as well. And I really liked as well, Steve, your comment there about empathy, the capacity to connect. I heard Bruce Daisley speak, and I hope if you don't know Bruce Daisley, I'm sure many of you will, please do find Bruce online. He speaks a lot of sense when it comes to workplace culture. And I heard him talk, it was a Culture Pioneers event late last year, and he was talking about culture growing in the cracks in our organizations. I really loved that. But it's those cracks where actually we can fill those with the challenge and the difficulty, the uncertainty, the fear, the anxiety, those things that I think we might associate with that phrase toxic, which I won't use again now. Or we can fill it with the empathy, the connection, the dialogue, the desire to listen, to understand rather than listening to judge, the desire to be curious, using curiosity to learn rather than assuming I have all the answers. And I think that's the space that connects. I think that's the point that you're making there, Steve. Empathy is the capacity to connect, and multi-partiality too, where we're able to connect. I'm guessing that means by multiple parties without being subjective in our connections, Steve. But do please clarify multi-partiality. I'm sure it's I probably got that wrong there. But Dan, over to you. Any thoughts from yourself and Eunice as well? Please feel free to jump in on this really powerful conversation about the role of leadership and behaviour.
Do you want to go first, Yes?
Get myself off me. You can go first. I'll drop in.
Okay, I mean, my sense is just flip it the other way around. What does it mean to be unempathic? It means not to care about people, right? Not to care about where they're coming from, what their concerns are, what their needs, their interests, their fears are. What kind of a workplace is that? So, setting aside any business case, I think sometimes we can get a bit kind of stale and performative in relation to kind of business speak, stats, numbers, the rest of it. In the end, we're dealing with people, and if you want the results to pay off and speak for themselves, it's how do you grab the hearts and minds of people and what they care about and what they're interested in. That is the job of leadership and influence, right? So I think that whole question about the value of empathy is so obviously answered when you look at the antithesis and you say, well, what would that kind of workplace be like?
It's a really interesting point because you talked about that kind of that. You say it, Danny, and I think we would agree with it because it does rolls off the tongue. But you're talking about a model of leadership which is servant leadership, and the idea of the leader about delivering those transformational principles. Yet in the world of work, and I guess higher education, public bodies, and in private organisations, the concept of leadership is about gaining competitive advantage in order to pursue a career objective. Through a hierarchy and a hierarchical system, and ergo my leadership is an advantage that I have to enable me through my career progression and my career development. You're talking about leadership in a slightly different way here, I hear what you're saying, I think, and we start to see leadership, and we'll have a session on leadership as part of International People and Culture Week. But the idea of the leader's role is to serve and to generate leadership in others. But that requires systemic change in the way we think about organizations, because organizations value competitiveness, because in order to be able to get my next job as a senior leader, I need to be competitive in a recruitment process and through some form of talent competition, if you will. It doesn't reward the kind of leadership that we're describing here. Can I just take that out and just throw that in as a sort of provocation, Dan? And feel free, if you're listening to today's International People and Culture Week panel on making culture everybody's business, what do you think around the systems of our organizations? Does the system of the organization drive the wrong mindset, language, and behavior? But Dan, what did you think when I said that? Because that's what I heard you talking about.
I think the honest answer is yes sometimes, which is why we have to look critically at the system and whether it's intentionally designed to get the results that we want. I mean, I think it was W. Edwards Deming that talked about getting the results. The organization is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So we do need to look at it critically and see whether it is designed in the right way to facilitate the kind of culture you've described. But in the end, it's not the C-suite that drives the results in the organization, is it? It's not the hierarchy. It's everybody that contributes to that. And so value and business value and performance and mission impact has to be unlocked through thriving and flourishing people. So what causes the thriving and the flourishing in people? It's certainly not being empathized with. That's for sure. So let's make sure we attend to it. And I think that there is a job there of leadership. It's really hard because I know colleagues also spoke, but another provocation. And sometimes you can't do what people want, right? So you have to. There are times when you have to navigate the reality that says there are real constraints that you may not be aware of, or you might not have the same appreciation of because of where you're sat or what evidence you've got available to you or what you can see from your perspective. So again, that honesty and transparency of dialogue, of rationale, of answerability and accountability for choices and decisions that need to be made, for our role differences that we hold, that mean we sometimes have to make those decisions that perhaps, some folk may not either understand or agree with unless we explore that with them. We have to go into those spaces, I think, candidly and to through dialogue, explain and explore.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's such a powerful analysis of culture. And it feels to me, we'll kind of come to start to wrap up the session now. But yet again, whenever I have these conversations around culture, it reminds me, and I think you were talking about this, Kay, really at the beginning of your presentation as well, but it feels very, very personal. And it feels like it's, Dan, you talked about the sort of Tuesday afternoon effect. How does it feel right now? And I think this reminds me that culture is about it's people. It's how do I feel? It's how do I think? It's how do I react? It's how do I respond? It's what's going on for me right now. And in essence, culture then is the aggregation of all of those different elements within our organizations. And effective leadership and people function and so on and so forth is creating a space where that aggregates in a positive, constructive, effective way. And we handle the challenges and those difficulties effectively and constructively. Now, yes, I want to just come to you because we're doing some work called Culture and Leadership Alignment Labs. And part of the role of the lab is to help organizations to create that sense of leadership and alignment. I just wondered, before I ask the big question in terms of what are our listeners doing today to create those positive workplace cultures and to make culture everyone's business, I just wondered, Eunice, if there's any reflections in terms of the labs and how people might find out more about a lab if they were interested in creating that alignment between culture and leadership.
Yeah, I think so. The Alignment Labs are an initiative that we started to kind of get into organizations and understand what the common challenges that they had were and help them to kind of map the connection between both and how leadership spills into culture and how culture spills into leadership. And we have at TCM a selection of tools and resources under our belt. So it's almost as if when someone mentions something about culture or leadership, we're able to instantly come up with a solution for that. And I think one thing that's coming out of the Alignment Labs really clearly is how much culture needs to be integrated into everything you do, particularly leadership, but then also talent development, performance management. That's something we've been talking about a lot, and how you say that this is your culture, you say that these are the values you want to live by, but how is that being integrated into every other process? How's that being integrated into the recruitment of your leaders? You hire leadership and then you tell them the values rather than hiring them based on how well you feel they display the values. So we have so many conversations around the interconnectedness between every single thing that comes out of an organization's mostly the people team, and how that can drive real culture change. So we are delivering the sessions, they're free of charge. If you wanted to reach out to me again, you can. I'll see if I can drop my email in the chat, but then also if you just wanted to drop a comment to say you're interested. In terms of the logistics of that, we hold a 1 hour scoping call with David, and obviously he comes from a very thought leadership perspective in terms of what your organization needs, and then we try to get around 10 to 12 managers, leaders in the room to host this 90-minute virtual session and inform them of solutions that might be supportive of what they're trying to achieve.
Eunice, amazing. Thank you. They're so exciting, the lab. So if you're interested, please do drop your details in the comments there, or let Eunice know through the email address that she provided earlier, and we'd be very happy to have the conversation. So we're going to wrap up. I'm going to ask everyone who's listening, please do share anything that you're doing in your organizations, or if you're a consultant or a partner to organizations, helping them on their journey, what are you seeing them doing? So what are you doing, or what are your clients or partners doing to help make culture everybody's business? But before we do, we'll come to it. But Kate, I'm going to ask you, what excites you, Kate? What excites you about the shift from old HR into a new people and culture function? What excites you about that, Kate?
It's just how it's no longer every day is the same. Every day comes with a new challenge, because that whole payroll time is now, and you have to bring your raw data by now. That's boring. But you have to interact with new challenges, because the people are questioning you. They're challenging the ideas that you feel are strategic. They're like, but we don't think that's strategic enough. This is what the competition's doing. Here's the data to support that. So I think that's made it so exciting, because you do also have to look at how to meet these shifts and changes to make sure that you also don't lose your people. They don't feel heard. They don't feel accommodated into the contribution that they're bringing into the organization. So for me, HR was boring. I could shoot me already. I am excited about people and culture, because every day you wake up, it's new and different.
Wow, Kate, I'm sold. I'm in. Kate, thank you so much. Dan, what excites you about the transformation?
Okay, but I'm going to end up with a slight provocation, because this is about people, right? And so I write a lot on LinkedIn. Shameless plug. Do visit some of the articles. One of them was about recently about parrots and penguins, right? And don't let our work on culture become cultish. And we're not looking for assimilation. We need people that contribute and enrich culture and add to culture, not just simply fit. My closing remark is about the value of diversity and valuing difference and inclusive culture, because I think that's really, really critical. It's critical in our people functions as they navigate this very complex world we talked about before, but it's critical throughout the organization, and we need to design for that, not for assimilation or not for simply fit, because I think a lot of bias and things get hidden under that.
Absolutely.
So take a look at the article. You might find it funny.
Yes. Well, we'll share that as well. We'll shine a light on that and share that as far and wide as we're able, Dan. But thank you so much. And Eunice, you're working with a great number of organisations. Eunice, what excites you about the transformation from HR to people and culture?
I think just removing the pain out of what is an everyday experience. I think something that you said, Dan, resonates is, it shouldn't be a thing of you're waiting for your next annual leave or to get a break from work. Every day should be enjoyable. Obviously, there'll be difficult things that happen, more challenging days, but it shouldn't need to be something you need an escape from. So I'm excited when organizations come to us and say that they're trying to build cultures like that and seeing really transformative results. And I know that there's so many people and so much interest from groups just like this, and it is very reassuring to have conversations like this, to know that we're not on individual journeys. We as a community are trying to move forward together.
Amazing. We need a badge or a logo at the PCA called We Heart People and Culture, Jonathan. We're gonna have to go and get this, because I'm definitely starting to think this is the way forward. Jonathan, you're living and breathing this every day. What excites you about the transformation, Jonathan, from sort of classic traditional HR to a people and culture environment?
Yeah, I think this journey for the last 3 years, we've been speaking to so many people and culture directors, officers, officials around them. I think at the end of the day, the conversations that we enjoy the most are the ones where they actually share with us practical ways in which they're making those small changes, in changing culture. And I like what Dan said about, don't design stuff just for the rhetoric. Let it be relatable. Let it be something that's co-designed. Let's begin that conversation. I think I can see that shift happening already in different jurisdictions across the globe. This is a global panel. There'll be around 20 speakers joining us from 8 to 10 different countries over the next 4 days. And everyone's going to tell you a different story, but they're going to sing the same chorus, right? That we got to start that conversation. We've got to start talking about the change that's required in the workplace. And I'm really fascinated about small changes that people are bringing in, even whether it's, something as just having a conversation, opening up those small pockets for employees to come and talk to their line managers, creating that space, that very free and safe space to have these conversations. It starts with small things like that. It starts with picnics. It starts with lunches on weekends. It starts with drinks on the weekend. It could be anything. It could be anything that kind of brings that camaraderie between in that workplace. But also, I think, the small changes that are coming through. I think, and I think all the speakers today spoke about that active listening and reframing. I think there's such powerful skills, because we had a member meet just 2 days ago, David, and we met with around 24 members who came together with a member meet. We have member meets that happen every month at the PCA. So if you're not a member yet, please do join us. There are around 600 members in the club already. We meet on the last Friday of every month. And then the last member meet, the big question was, everyone's trying to get themselves trained as people and culture professionals. What kind of training are you actually looking out for? What are those skills? That's a big question. If you had to identify, what should a people and culture director or a people and culture officer have as a skill set? What would that definition be? How would you list down those skills? And I think active listening, empathetic listening, reframing comes right on top there. And I guess everything else follows suit after that. But I would like to know more about that from Kate and Dan as well. If you had to list down the top skills for a people and culture professional, what would they be? Simply listing them down.
Okay, sorry.
All right, great, thanks. So I think the soft skills and not so much the hard skills like you're talking about. And one that comes to mind is problem solving, because you'll be solving problems 365 days a year. And those problems are so layered. So you also have to be emotionally intelligent to tell the leaders that this is the feedback we're receiving from the people. So those soft skills, hone on them, build them. People are so dynamic. So wherever there's an interaction of people, EQ comes even higher than IQ, and not to sound cliche. And you will always be solving problems. I was just about to say, don't do it if you haven't done it yet. Don't join the profession. But since I want to encourage you, because you're going to be the detective. You're going to be the detective, you're going to be the psychologist, you're going to be the counselor, you're going to be the coach, you're going to be the mentor. So if you're wired for all that, by all means, just build on your EQ, build on your problem solving.
Love that. Thank you so much, Kate. And Dan, any thoughts from yourself in terms of those capabilities and approaches and behaviours that we need to see within the function?
I think we've covered the ground already, really. But I agree with what others have said around curiosity. I like the EQ element. I do think it's important, again, thinking about cultural intelligence more broadly. David Livermore does some brilliant stuff in that space as well around cultural intelligence, and you take a look at his work. I think it's an exciting time actually, because we are reforming, reshaping, creating a different vision for the future, and that should be exciting. It should be a really important time to shape and contribute.
It's amazing. I know we've got Enrico Rubio on the call today. Enrico, a very warm welcome to you from Hacking HR, and we are inspired by the work that you do, Enrico, and all of your fabulous colleagues at Hacking HR to shine a light and support those on a transformational journey. And I think you've mentioned others there as well. So it's great to have so many folk here. I think for me, from across the world, what an amazing conversation. I'll wrap it up in a moment, but to me, it's the benefits of this, and what inspires me about this was spoken to me by one of my clients very, very recently. And we were doing some really interesting, it was a big civil service department. We were doing some really interesting transformational work around some of their HR systems and processes, moving towards a more purpose-driven and values-based approach. And her statement to me sort of stuck with me, because what she said is, I've been in HR for 30 years and I'm approaching the end of my career. And I've only now realised this is why I came into HR in the first place. And I think there was a sort of sense of both excitement from her, but also that sense of, damn, if only I'd got this a little bit earlier. And that sort of real sense. And that to me was really profound. It feels that those people who are coming into the HR profession didn't come into to run through bureaucratic and complex and often cumbersome and generally quite divisive systems and processes that we've built in our workplaces. They come in to unleash the brilliance of people themselves and others. And of course, culture, and back to the conversation about leadership, culture and cultural change, as in so much in life, it's never them, it's always me. So as we start to see the cultural shift and think about its moves from them as the problem, as you said, Jonathan, to actually recognizing that it starts with me. And it's starting about how do I shift my language, mindset and behavior. And the people function enables that, facilitates that, helps that to grow, and through coaching, conversations and skills and so on and so forth, helping that to happen. So that's what, for me, the people and culture function is doing. It's helping each of us to flourish and thrive, helping our teams to deliver their collective brilliance, and for our organizations to succeed through what are incredibly tough and challenging times that we're experiencing in our world. And if there's one thing that I think really undermines good culture is fear. I think we'll take that word toxic out, because I think that's too simple a term. It's fear, and the amygdala, which we experience, that amygdala fear response, fight or flight response, is switched right on now for many of us because of the world that we live in and the challenges we're facing. So is there not an argument for us in our workplaces, a responsibility perhaps for each of us at work to help dial down that fear response? And instead of thinking about adrenaline and cortisol being the primary chemicals in our workplaces that run like rivers down many of our corridors in our organizations, is there a responsibility for us to think about how do we release the dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And if there's one piece of advice I give to any HR department as they're starting to take those tentative first steps into a people and culture function, is get a green pen in one hand and a red pen in another hand. Just get a green pen and a red pen in one hand. And with the red pen, mark all of the parts of some of your policies. Just pick a policy. Pick a policy. I'm going to pick grievance procedure. Pick the policy, and with a red pen, mark all of the bits which are likely to switch this on in my brain and make me get stressed and fearful. Then mark with a green pen all the parts of that policy that are going to release the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, the endorphin, the happier hormones, the ones that make me feel good and thriving and flourishing. If you've got more than a line of green pens, send it to me, and I'll put it on my website as an example of best practice. Now, the challenge then to the people and culture function, you clearly need red pen. You clearly have to have red pen. But perhaps the objective as we're making the move towards making culture everybody's business and helping us to achieve the challenges that Kate and Dan and Eunice and Jonathan and everyone on the call has thrown down to us, is how do we calibrate the green and the red pen so there's an equal balance? And I share that with you as something which we can all maybe take away. How do we create balance and equilibrium in our organizations where compliance and risk and the formality and the rigidity that we need in some aspects of our organizations is balanced with the need for us to be more compassionate, more supportive, more empathetic, and the value that that brings. So thank you so much for being part of International People and Culture Week. Kate, wow, thank you so much. That was just wonderful. Thank you so much. And Dan, I've just loved that. It was such an enlightening. And I think the word for me is it's for Kate, you were the tree. Dan, you were like, use your loaf. The bread analogy, I love that. The culture is use your loaf for the culture. Eunice, thank you for setting up People and Culture Consulting so superbly. And of course, we've got our diploma in People and Culture, which we're launching as well. So we'll be able to share information about that. I've also, if you're interested, and you might not be, but if you're interested in the interface between AI and people and culture, I've recently developed a custom GPT called the Quality Conversations Coach. I'm working on it hard in the background. It's pretty cool. If you're interested in having a coach in your pocket to help you have the conversations when you need them, let me know and I'll share the GPT with you. You can have a little play with it and let me know what you think. But the feedback I've been getting is it's pretty good. So let me know if you're interested in how you integrate AI into some of these conversations. But finally, Jonathan, to you, thank you so much again for all of your incredible work making this happen. Thank you, everyone who's joined us on LinkedIn, on YouTube. There's been some great comments, and I was trying to leave comments, but I was struggling to respond to people's comments as I was sharing on the live version. So I'm going to go through and do that in a wee moment. Well, I'm speaking to some colleagues in Canada at the moment to do some work around cultural change. So that's going to be very, very interesting. But please do read through the comments. There's so much insight, so much learning, so much richness that's come through, particularly some of the comments there towards the end as you were sharing some of the things you're doing. So please do take a moment for reading through those. Jonathan, you've put the next panel. The next panel is at 2 p.m. British summertime. It is summertime here. We're on 30 degrees centigrade here in the UK. We haven't put sustainability on our culture agenda yet, but it firmly needs to go on because we're at least 10 to 15 degrees over what it should be here in the UK on the 1st of May, which is my head looks rather red. But on that bombshell, I'm going to say thank you, everybody. International People and Culture Week 2025 is now live. We're off. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Eunice. Thanks, Jonathan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.